Tom Harper was a cleaner in the bustling city of Chicago, a man who had lived his life in the shadows of the glittering skyline. His days were spent sweeping sidewalks, emptying trash bins, and sorting through discarded waste, his rough hands telling the story of years of thankless labor. Yet Tom's heart was resilient, and his weathered face still bore traces of kindness that life's hardships had not eroded. One frigid November night, as Tom made his routine rounds near an alley behind a downtown diner, he heard a faint, unfamiliar sound. It was soft at first, barely audible over the hum of traffic and the rustling of trash bags. But as he strained his ears, the sound grew clearer. A cry. Tom's pulse quickened. The cry wasn't just any sound. It was the helpless wail of a baby. Guided by the noise, he cautiously navigated through the darkened alley, his flashlight casting eerie shadows on the brick walls and garbage heaps. His breath caught when he spotted the source of the sound. Nestled between two overflowing trash bins, wrapped in a torn blanket, was a newborn baby boy. The child's tiny face was red from crying, his fists trembling in the cold air. For a moment, Tom stood frozen, his heart aching at the sight. Who would... Tom's voice cracked, his words swallowed by the lump in his throat. He crouched down, his calloused hands trembling as he gently lifted the baby. The child's cries softened, as if sensing the warmth of Tom's touch. Tom glanced around the alley, hoping to find someone, anyone, who might have left the baby. But the street was empty, the city's usual cacophony providing no answers. Anger simmered beneath his shock, mingling with a profound sense of sadness. "Hey, little guy," he whispered, holding the baby close to his chest to shield him from the biting wind. "Don't worry, I've got you." Carrying the child home to his modest one-bedroom apartment, Tom hurried to warm some milk. The space was small and cluttered, a reflection of his solitary, unassuming life. He improvised a bottle and fed the baby, who latched on hungrily. As Tom cradled the child in his arms, an unfamiliar but welcome warmth spread through him. He decided to name the baby Henry. The name felt strong, steadfast, qualities Tom silently vowed to instill in the boy. The next few days were a whirlwind for Tom. Between his cleaning shifts and caring for Henry, sleep became a luxury. He visited a nearby clinic, where a kind-hearted nurse gave him advice on newborn care. His neighbors raised eyebrows and whispered behind his back, some warning him of the legal troubles that might come from keeping the baby. But Tom's resolve was unshaken. He spent his meager savings on diapers, formula, and warm clothes for Henry. The child's presence brought a joy Tom hadn't felt in years. He sang lullabies in his hoarse voice, spent hours rocking Henry to sleep, and found himself smiling at the baby's innocent coos and tiny, curious expressions. Still, a shadow loomed over Tom's newfound happiness. Who had left Henry there? Were his parents searching for him? And if they ever showed up, would Tom have the strength to let Henry go? For now, Tom pushed those fears aside. In his heart, Henry was already his son, a gift he had never dared to dream of. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Tom knew he would fight to give Henry the love and security he deserved. Unbeknownst to Tom, this was only the beginning of a journey that would test his courage, his heart, and the very definition of family. Raising Henry transformed Tom Harper's life in ways he could never have imagined. The once solitary cleaner now had a purpose far greater than just getting through each day. Henry's laughter filled the small apartment, turning it into a haven of love and warmth. Though Tom struggled to make ends meet, He poured every ounce of his energy into ensuring Henry's happiness and well-being. Each day brought its own challenges. Henry's first fever had Tom pacing the room in panic, and his early attempts at crawling resulted in countless baby-proofing measures around the apartment. Tom often returned home from work bone-tired, but the sight of Henry's outstretched arms and toothless grin made every hardship worthwhile. As Henry grew, so did the bond between them. The boy's curiosity was boundless, and Tom became his guide to the world. They spent evenings reading picture books borrowed from the library, their voices mingling in laughter as Tom attempted silly animal impressions. On weekends, Tom would take Henry to the park, watching with pride as the boy chased after pigeons or played with other children. Years passed, and Henry became a lively 6-year-old with sparkling blue eyes and a mop of messy brown hair. He adored Tom, often mimicking his mannerisms and referring to him as Dad. To Henry, Tom was his world, a constant source of love, protection, and guidance. But as Henry grew older, so did the questions. One day, while sitting on the floor of their apartment, playing with building blocks, Henry looked up and asked, "Dad, why don't I have a mom like the other kids at school?" The question hit Tom like a punch to the gut. He had always known this moment would come, but he hadn't prepared an answer. He set down the block in his hand and pulled Henry onto his lap. "Well, kiddo," Tom began, his voice gentle, "not all families look the same. Some kids have a mom and dad, some have just one parent, and some have grandparents or even friends who take care of them. But you and me, we're a team. And I think we make a pretty good one, don't you?" Henry seemed to consider this, his small brow furrowed. "Yeah, we're the best team," he said with a grin, wrapping his arms around Tom's neck. Tom hugged him tightly, silently vowing to shield Henry from any pain that might come from knowing the truth. But fate had other plans. One rainy afternoon, while Tom was cleaning the lobby of a high-end office building, he overheard a conversation that sent a chill down his spine. Two women standing near the elevator were discussing a news story about a couple searching for their long-lost child, a baby boy who had gone missing 6 years ago under mysterious circumstances. Tom froze, his mop still in hand. Could it be? He hurried home that evening, his mind racing. He couldn't ignore the possibility that the couple might be Henry's biological parents. The thought of losing Henry felt like a knife twisting in his chest. For days, Tom debated what to do. He considered staying quiet, keeping Henry's past buried, but his conscience wouldn't let him. He knew that Henry had a right to know the truth someday, no matter how much it hurt. Gathering his courage, Tom began piecing together what little information he had about the night he found Henry. He visited the police station, asking discreet questions, and combed through online articles about missing children. Each step brought him closer to a revelation he wasn't sure he was ready to face. Meanwhile, Henry sensed the tension in Tom's demeanor. "Dad, is everything okay?" he asked one night, his innocent eyes full of concern. Tom knelt in front of him, forcing a smile. "Everything's fine, buddy. You just focus on being the amazing kid you are." But deep down, Tom knew their peaceful life was on the verge of a seismic change, one that would test the strength of the bond they had built over the years. The day everything changed began like any other. Tom Harper dropped Henry off at school, reminding him to finish his math homework and to be careful on the playground. Henry waved enthusiastically from the school gate, his messy brown hair bouncing with every step. Tom smiled, but the unease in his chest refused to fade. That afternoon, as Tom returned from his shift at the office building, he found a letter waiting for him on the creaky wooden table in his apartment. The envelope was crisp and white, standing out against the worn surroundings. With trembling hands, Tom opened it and began to read. The letter was from a lawyer representing a couple named David and Margaret Ellison. The words on the page blurred as Tom read about how they had lost their infant son 6 years ago, the victim of a botched kidnapping. A private investigator had recently uncovered records that pointed to Tom as the man who had found the baby. The Ellisons wanted to meet. Tom's chest tightened, his heart pounding like a drumbeat. He set the letter down, staring at it as if it might disappear. Every fiber of his being wanted to ignore it, to pretend he had never received it. But the weight of the truth pressed down on him. That evening, Tom sat with Henry on the couch, the television playing a cartoon in the background. Henry leaned against Tom's arm, laughing at the animated characters. Tom looked at the boy, who had become the center of his universe, and the thought of losing him felt like being torn in two. "Henry," Tom said softly, his voice barely audible over the television. "Yeah, Dad?" Henry replied, his eyes still fixed on the screen. Tom hesitated. "There's something important we need to talk about." Henry turned to look at him, sensing the seriousness in his tone. Tom gently switched off the TV and took Henry's hands in his own. "I've told you before that families can look different," Tom began, his voice steady but strained. "There's something I haven't told you about the day we became a family. I didn't meet you the way most dads meet their kids." Henry's brows furrowed, confusion and worry flickering in his young eyes. "What do you mean?" Tom swallowed hard. "The night I found you, you were just a tiny baby, left near some garbage. I didn't know who your parents were, but I knew I had to keep you safe. I've loved you as my own ever since, but it seems your biological parents have been looking for you all this time. They've found us, Henry. They want to meet you." Henry's face went pale. He pulled his hands away and stared at Tom. "So, you're not really my dad." Tom felt his heart shatter at the words. "Henry, I am your dad in every way that matters. I've been here for you every day, and I always will be. But yes, your birth parents are out there, and they want to see you. I won't force you to do anything, but I thought you should know." Tears welled up in Henry's eyes. Why didn't they want me? Why did they leave me? Tom pulled Henry into a tight embrace. "I don't know, buddy. I don't have all the answers. But I do know this. You are loved. You've always been loved." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Tom contacted the lawyer and arranged a meeting with the Ellisons, his heart heavy with dread. The meeting was set for a Saturday afternoon at a neutral location, a quiet park outside the city. When the day arrived, Tom and Henry approached the park hand in hand. Henry clung tightly to Tom, his usual liveliness subdued by a mix of fear and curiosity. Tom spotted the Ellisons sitting on a bench, their faces a mix of hope and nervous anticipation. Margaret Ellison's eyes filled with tears the moment she saw Henry. David Ellison stood beside her, his expression stoic, but his hands trembling. "It's him," Margaret whispered, her voice breaking. Henry hid behind Tom, peeking out cautiously. Tom knelt down and gently squeezed Henry's shoulder. "It's okay, buddy. Just take your time." The Ellisons knelt too, keeping their distance. "Hi, Henry," Margaret said softly, her voice trembling. "We're so glad to finally meet you. We've missed you every single day." Henry looked at Tom, searching for reassurance. Tom nodded encouragingly. Slowly, Henry stepped forward. The Ellisons spoke gently, sharing stories of their years of searching, of the hope that kept them going. They showed Henry photos of the nursery they had prepared for him, and of themselves holding a baby blanket identical to the one he had been wrapped in that fateful night. Tom watched from a distance, his heart torn. He knew this was the right thing to do, but the thought of Henry slipping away from him was unbearable. As the meeting ended, the Ellisons asked the question Tom had been dreading. "Henry," Margaret said softly, "would you like to come and stay with us? We'd love for you to see your home." All eyes turned to Henry, who stood frozen between the two worlds he now had to choose. The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Henry's small shoulders stiffened, his eyes darting from the hopeful faces of the Ellisons to Tom's weathered, anxious gaze. "Do I have to?" Henry finally asked, his voice trembling. Tom's chest tightened, but he forced himself to kneel beside Henry, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "No, Henry," he said gently. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to. This is your choice." Margaret's voice quivered as she added, "We don't want to take you away from anything you love, Henry. We just want you to know how much you mean to us." Henry looked back at Tom, his eyes brimming with tears. "But you're my dad," he said, his voice breaking. Tom smiled through his own tears. "And I always will be. No matter what happens, no matter where life takes you, you'll always have me. But your biological parents? They've been searching for you because they love you too. It's okay to let them be part of your life if that's what you want." Henry hesitated, then turned to the Ellisons. "I want to stay with my dad," he said firmly, gripping Tom's hand. "But can we still talk? Can I see you sometimes?" Margaret sobbed quietly, covering her mouth with her hand. David nodded, his eyes red with unshed tears. "Of course, Henry. We'll always be here for you. We just want you to be happy." Tom felt an overwhelming mix of relief and heartbreak. He had been prepared to lose Henry, but now faced the delicate balance of sharing the boy he had raised. "Thank you," he said to the Ellisons, his voice thick with emotion, "for understanding." In the weeks that followed, a new kind of family took shape. The Ellisons began visiting regularly, bringing gifts and sharing stories from their lives. Henry, initially shy, grew more comfortable with them, his world expanding as he learned about the people who had brought him into the world. But at night, when the world quieted, it was still Tom who tucked Henry into bed, who read him stories, and who stayed by his side until he drifted off to sleep. One evening, as Tom lay beside Henry, after reading his favorite bedtime story, Henry turned to him and whispered, "I'm glad I found you, Dad." Tom swallowed hard, his heart swelling with love. "No, kiddo," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from Henry's face. "I'm the one who's lucky. You saved me." And as the two drifted into a peaceful sleep, the tiny apartment was filled with the unshakable warmth of a love that had been chosen, not born, a bond that transcended bloodlines and circumstance. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with someone who loves emotional and inspiring tales. We bring you more stories like this on our channel, Stories of Brilliance. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of brilliance. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.